Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Ivan Jue, and I teach international business at Cerritos College. Today, I will discuss one of the most important topics in international business: global marketplaces and business centers. I will go through how different regions of the world participate in the global economy and how multinational corporations, or MNCs, must understand economic, political, cultural, and geographic differences when doing business internationally. By the end of this lecture, you should understand why some regions dominate the global economy, how international trade and foreign investment shape countries, the strengths and weaknesses of major global markets, the economic characteristics of North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and South America, why international managers must adapt strategies across regions. So let's begin. So first, we shall discuss North America as a major marketplace and business center. Then we will describe Western Europe's role in the world economy. Then explain the importance of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Analyze Asia's growing economic power. Assess challenges facing Africa and the Middle East. And then finally, we shall evaluate South America's economic development and prospects. In over 50 years, the world economy has shifted dramatically. Developed economies such as the United States, the European Union, and Japan still account for a significant portion of global economic activity. But you can see how emerging markets such as China, India, and Southeast Asia are growing very rapidly. So the North American marketplace includes the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America, and Caribbean nations. Together, the region produces approximately 28% of the world's output. So the United States is the world's largest economy, a major buyer and seller in international trade, and the home of the world's dominant currency, the US dollar. This gives the United States huge influence over international business and global markets. The US is the world's largest economy, so that means the United States produces more goods and services than any other country. It has 24% of the world's GDP in 2017. GDP means the gross domestic product. It measures the total value of all goods and services produced. So in essence, this means that a quarter of everything produced in the world came from the United States economy in 2017. That is enormous economic power. It also provides 1/10 of world exports. Exports are goods and services sold to other countries. The United States is a major exporter of technology, software, airplanes, entertainment, financial services, and agricultural products. Examples include Apple iPhones, Microsoft software, Hollywood movies, and Boeing aircraft. The United States imports about 1/8 of the world imports. Imports are goods and services bought from other countries. The US also buys huge amounts of products from abroad: electronics from China, cars from Japan and Germany, oil from other nations, clothing from developing countries. This makes the United States a critical customer for many countries. It is the prime market for lower income and higher income countries. So this means countries at all development levels want access to the US market. So what are lower income countries? Countries with developing economies that export textiles, shoes, raw materials, manufactured goods to US consumers. As an example, Vietnam exporting clothing to the United States. Higher income countries. These are developed countries that also depend on the US market. Examples are Germany selling cars, Japan selling electronics and vehicles, Canada exporting energy and lumber. So the US is important to both rich and poor countries. The US dollar is very important as the invoicing currency. Many international business transactions are priced in US dollars. As an example, oil is usually traded in dollars. International contracts often use dollars, even if neither country is American. Why? Because the dollar is stable, trusted, and widely accepted. The foreign currency reserve. Central banks around the world hold US dollars as reserves. Countries keep dollar reserves to stabilize their own currencies, pay international debts, conduct global trade. This makes the dollar the world's main reserve currency. So why does this matter in international business? Businesses entering global markets often target the US first because of its huge consumer market. They also watch US economic conditions carefully, use US dollars in international contracts, adjust strategies based on US demand and interest rates. So changes in the US economy can affect businesses worldwide. The US also exhibits political stability and military strength. The US is considered politically and economically stable compared to many countries. That stability gives investors confidence because laws are relatively predictable, property rights are protected, financial markets are strong, contracts are generally enforced. This lowers risk for businesses and investors. Flight capital means money that leaves unstable countries and moves to safer countries. As an example, if investors fear war, corruption, inflation, and political instability, they may move their money into US banks, US stocks, US real estate, US Treasury bonds. The US is often viewed as a safe haven for global capital. As an example, during global crises, investors frequently buy US dollars and US government bonds. Foreign investments. Foreign investment means companies or investors from other countries putting money into the US. Examples include building factories, opening offices, buying companies, investing in stocks or real estate. The US is also an important recipient of long-term foreign investment. That means many countries invest in the US for the long run because they believe the economy is strong, profits are reliable, the legal system is dependable. Examples would be Toyota building factories in the US, Samsung investing in semiconductor plants, foreign investors buying US commercial real estate. This creates jobs, economic growth, technological development. International trade is increasingly more important to the US as the US economy is becoming more connected to global markets. Businesses increasingly import raw materials, export products, outsource operations, sell globally. Modern companies depend heavily on international supply chains. As an example, an iPhone may be designed in the US, assembled in China, use chips from Taiwan, and components from Korea and Japan. International trade is a relatively small component of the US economy. Even though trade is important, the US economy is so large that most economic activity still comes from domestic consumers, local businesses, and internal services. Compared to smaller countries, the US depends less on exports as a percentage of GDP. As an example, countries like Singapore, South Korea, Germany depend more heavily on international trade than the US. The US has a huge internal market, so it can generate growth domestically. MNCs, or multinational corporations. MNCs are Companies that operate in multiple countries. Examples are Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Coca-Cola, and Tesla. 27% of the world's 500 largest corporations are headquartered in the United States. This means that many of the world's most powerful companies are based in the US. This gives the US major influence over technology, finance, entertainment, manufacturing, innovation, and global business practices. These corporations operate worldwide and shape the international trade and investment. So this figure shows which countries had the headquarters of the world's 500 largest corporations as of 2017. The key takeaway here is that the United States had 126 of the world's 500 largest corporations. This shows the enormous size of the US economy, demonstrating strong innovation, advanced financial markets, and global business influence. Examples of major US corporations are Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Walmart. The US has many companies dominating technology, finance, retail, entertainment, aerospace, and healthcare. China is close behind with 111 corporations. This is very significant because it shows China's rapid economic growth. China's rise reflects industrial expansion, manufacturing power, government support, growing global influence. Examples include Alibaba Group, Tencent, Huawei. The graph suggests China is becoming a major competitor to the US economically. Japan is still a major economic power. Japan has 52 corporations. Japan is known for automobiles, electronics, manufacturing, engineering. So examples of this would be Toyota, Sony, and Honda. European countries also have strong global corporations. Examples are Germany with 32 companies, France 28, United Kingdom about 21. These countries are strong in automotive, banking, luxury goods, pharmaceuticals, industrial manufacturing. Examples would include BMW, Siemens, Louis Vuitton, or LVMH. The rest of the world. The rest of the world category has 74 corporations combined. That means many other countries each had smaller numbers of major corporations. So why does this matter in international business? This chart demonstrates where global economic power is concentrated, which means countries dominate multinational business and where many important business decisions are made. Countries with many large corporations usually have strong economies, advanced infrastructure, skilled labor, access to capital, and global trade influence. Here we show the importance of exports and international trade to Canada and its close economic relationship with the United States. Canada's economy depends heavily on exports, especially trade with the United States. Exports are goods and services sold to other countries. Canada exports many products around the world, including oil, natural gas, lumber, minerals, automobiles, wheat, and machinery. Exports are the major driver of Canada's economy. Exports comprise about 31% of Canada's 2017 GDP. GDP, again, gross domestic product, measures total economic production. Exports made up about 31% of Canada's economy in 2017. That is a large percentage. It shows Canada is highly connected to international trade and more dependent on exports than the United States. Smaller countries often rely more heavily on trade because their domestic markets are smaller. Rich natural resources are Canada's most important exports. Canada has abundant natural resources, including oil, forests, fresh water, minerals, natural gas, and agricultural land. Because of this, Canada exports many raw materials and commodities. Examples would be crude oil to the United States, lumber for construction, wheat and agricultural products, metals and mining products. Natural resources are a major source of Canadian income. The United States is the dominant market for Canadian goods. The US is Canada's biggest trading partner. A very large portion of Canadian exports go to the United States because the countries share a border. Transportation is easier. Trade agreements reduce barriers, and the economies are highly integrated. Examples of Canada to US exports are energy, auto parts, timber, agricultural products. This means Canada's economy is strongly influenced by US economic conditions. If the US economy slows down, Canadian exports may decrease too. The US-Canada two-way trade is one of the largest bilateral trading relationships in the world. Two-way trade means both countries buy and sell goods to each other. Bilateral means involving two countries. The US and Canada trade enormous amounts every day. Examples include Canada exporting oil and lumber to the United States, the US exporting machinery, technology, and consumer goods to Canada. Their economies are deeply interconnected. Why is this relationship important? The US-Canada trade relationship supports millions of jobs, manufacturing, energy supply chains, transportation, and economic growth in both countries. Trade agreements such as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement help facilitate this trade. Canada is considered an attractive and stable place for international business and investment because of its location, political system, infrastructure, and education. Foreign investment means companies or investors from other countries putting money into Canada. Examples are building factories, opening offices, investing in energy projects, buying Canadian companies, investing in real estate or stocks. Canada attracts investment from the United States, Europe, Asia, and many multinational corporations. Canada is located directly next to the United States, the world's largest economy. This gives Canada major advantages: easier transportation, lower shipping costs, faster supply chains, strong trade access. Companies can operate in Canada while still serving U.S. customers. An example would be a company may build a factory in Canada and export products into the United States. This geographic advantage makes Canada attractive for international businesses. Investors prefer countries where laws are predictable, contracts are enforced, governments are stable, corruption is relatively low. Canada is viewed as politically stable, business friendly, and legally reliable. This lowers investment risk. Businesses are more willing to invest large amounts of money when they trust the system. Infrastructure includes roads, ports, railways, airports, internet, utilities. Canada has strong infrastructure, which helps businesses transport goods, communicate efficiently, and operate smoothly. Canada also has well-educated workers, strong universities, skilled professionals. This provides companies with engineers, scientists, managers, technology workers, and skilled labor. A skilled workforce attracts multinational companies. There is some lingering risk, however. There is a long-standing tension between French-speaking Canadians and English-speaking Canadians. This mainly refers to the province of Quebec, where French language and culture are very important. Historically, there have been political debates about language rights, cultural identity, and even Quebec independence. Why does this matter to business? Political or cultural conflicts can create uncertainty for investors. Businesses may worry about policy changes, regional instability, language requirements, or regulatory differences. However, Canada overall is still considered one of the safest and most stable countries for investment. Mexico has transitioned from a protected, government-controlled economy and became more open to global trade and foreign investment. Mexico has the largest population of Spanish speakers in the world. This is important for international business because Mexico represents a very large consumer market and it is culturally influential in Latin America. Its large population also provides a large labor force, manufacturing workers, and growing consumer demand. An open market system means businesses and trade operate with fewer government restrictions. Private companies play a larger role, and international trade and investment is encouraged. Mexico gradually shifted towards a freer market economy. Economic nationalism means protecting domestic industries from foreign competition, limiting imports, restricting foreign ownership, and increasing government control. In the past, Mexico used many protectionist policies. Mexico has since reversed these policies, meaning it reduced protectionism and became more globally connected. Mexico began allowing more foreign products into the country and more foreign companies to invest there. This encouraged multinational corporations to build factories, create supply chains, and invest in manufacturing. Examples include automobile manufacturing, electronics assembly, and aerospace production. Many global companies now manufacture in Mexico because labor costs are lower than in the US, and Mexico has strong access to North American markets. Mexico privatized many industries and reduced state control, so that means private businesses became more important, competition increased, and market forces had greater influence. The government moved away from controlling large parts of the economy directly. Mexico had entered into multiple international trade agreements to encourage trade and investment. The most important example is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, previously NAFTA. These agreements reduce tariffs, trade barriers, and restrictions between countries. This helped Mexico become deeply integrated into North American supply chains. Why Mexico is important in international business? Mexico is strategically important because it is geographically close to the US, labor costs are relatively competitive, it has strong manufacturing capabilities, and it participates in major trade agreements. Many companies use Mexico for manufacturing, assembly, exports, and regional distribution. As an example, with the auto industry, a car sold in the US may involve engines from the US, assembly in Mexico, parts from Canada. This shows how interconnected North American trade has become. Central America and the Caribbean contain diverse economies, with some countries depending heavily on tourism and offshore finance, while others are developing middle-income economies. The region is separated into two groups. The first is Central America. This is the land area connecting North America and South America. Countries include Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Belize. These economies often rely on agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, and trade. The second group are island nations in the Caribbean Sea. Examples are Jamaica, Bahamas, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic. Many Caribbean economies are small but internationally connected. Some Caribbean countries are considered relatively wealthy compared to other developing nations. This is often because they developed strong industries such as tourism, banking, offshore finance, and international services. Even though these countries may have small populations, they can generate high income per person. Some Caribbean nations became important financial centers for offshore financing. This is where international companies, wealthy individuals, and investors hold money or conduct financial activities. These countries often attract business because of favorable tax systems, banking services, and financial privacy laws. Examples historically associated with offshore finance, Bahamas, and Cayman Islands. Tourism is extremely important for many Caribbean economies. People visit for the beaches, resorts, cruises, tropical climate, and recreation. Tourism creates jobs in hotels, restaurants, transportation, entertainment, and retail. For some island nations, tourism is one of the largest sources of income. Costa Rica and Panama are economically stronger than many neighboring countries. Costa Rica is known for political stability, ecotourism, education, technology investment, and environmental protection. It attracts tourists, foreign investment, and technology companies. Panama is especially important because of the Panama Canal. This canal is one of the world's most important shipping routes. Panama benefits from global trade, logistics, banking, and transportation services. So, why is this region important for international business? This region is important because of strategic trade locations, tourism, international shipping, offshore financial services, and growing emerging markets. Businesses may invest in tourism development, logistics, banking, agricultural, and manufacturing. Although some countries in Central America and the Caribbean have grown economically, many still struggle with political instability, poverty, weak education systems, and economic limitations. Political instability means governments change frequently, political conflict exists, corruption may occur, or laws and policies are unpredictable. This creates uncertainty for businesses, investors, and economic growth. Companies are often hesitant to invest heavily in countries where political conditions are unstable. Examples of instability may include protests, coups, corruption scandals, or weak government institutions. Historically, the United States has frequently intervened politically or militarily in parts of Central America and the Caribbean. Reasons included protecting U.S. business interests, Cold War politics, regional security concerns, and influence over trade routes. Examples historically include involvement in Panama, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Cuba. Many countries in the region struggle with limited school funding, lower education access, insufficient training, and fewer economic resources. This can reduce workforce skills, productivity, technological advancement, and economic growth. Businesses often need skilled workers, so weak education systems can discourage investment. The middle class is important because it drives consumer spending, supports political stability, and strengthens economic growth. A weak middle class means large gaps between rich and poor, fewer consumers with purchasing power, and slower economic development. Many economies in the region have wealthy elites, large low-income populations, but relatively small middle-income groups. Poverty remains a major challenge in several countries in the region. Poverty can lead to poor health care, lower education levels, crime, migration, and slower economic progress. This can create long-term development difficulties. Some countries place restrictions on imports to protect local businesses, conserve foreign currency, or control trade balances. Import limitations may include tariffs, quotas, licensing agreements, or trade barriers. While these policies may protect domestic industries temporarily, they can also reduce competition, increase prices, and limit consumer choices. Western Europe is one of the world's most advanced and economically important regions, but not every country participates in the EU in the same way. Western Europe includes many highly developed countries with strong economies, advanced technology, high standards of living, and major global corporations. Examples include Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Netherlands, Switzerland. Western Europe is one of the most influential economic regions in the world. Many Western European countries belong to the European Union. The EU is an economic and political partnership between European countries. The purpose of the EU is to promote trade, reduce barriers between countries, improve cooperation, and strengthen Europe's economy. The benefits of EU membership. EU members generally enjoy free trade between member countries, easier movement of workers, common regulations, and coordinated economic policies. For businesses, this creates a very large single market, fewer trade barriers, and easier expansion across Europe. An example would be a company in Germany who can easily sell products in France, Italy, or Spain without major tariffs. However, not all Western European countries are EU members. Examples include Switzerland, Norway, and after Brexit, United Kingdom. These countries still trade heavily with the EU, but may keep independent policies, maintain separate currencies, or avoid some EU regulations. Why does this matter in international business? Western Europe is important because it contains many wealthy consumers, has advanced infrastructure, and includes major multinational corporations. Businesses entering Europe must understand EU trade rules, local regulations, currencies, and differences between the EU and non-EU countries. As an example, a U.S. company selling products in Europe may need to follow EU product standards, comply with EU privacy laws, and manage different tax or trade rules for non-EU countries. Here is a map of Western Europe showing countries in the European Union, including countries that use the euro currency, major cities, and important political and economic relationships in Europe. The map shows you how to visualize how Europe is economically integrated. The colors represent different groups of countries. The purple countries are EU members using the euro currency. This group is often called the Eurozone. Examples include Germany, France, Italy, Spain. These countries share common trade rules and the same currency, the euro. The light blue countries, these are EU members using their own national currencies instead of the euro. Examples would be Poland and Sweden. These countries belong to the EU but still maintain separate currencies. The orange countries, these are countries not in the EU. Examples would be Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland. They still trade heavily with Europe but are not official EU members. I wanted to note about Brexit, which applies to the United Kingdom. In 2016, the United Kingdom voted to leave the EU. This was a major political and economic event. Brexit created uncertainty involving trade, immigration, regulations, and business operations between the UK and Europe. Germany. Germany is the largest economy in Europe and has major influence within the EU. The European Central Bank. This manages the euro, controls monetary policy, and helps maintain economic stability for euro-using countries. Germany historically had strong influence over European monetary policy because of its powerful economy. And then these are cities that have populations over 1 million. Examples are Paris, Berlin, Madrid, Rome, and Amsterdam. These cities are important centers for finance, trade, tourism, government, and multinational corporations. So why does Western Europe matter for international business? Western Europe is important because it contains many wealthy consumers, has advanced infrastructure, strong legal systems, and major global corporations. The EU also creates easier trade between countries, fewer tariffs, and a large unified marketplace. This makes Europe attractive for international companies. And then this map also shows a great example of economic integration. This means countries cooperate economically by reducing trade barriers, sharing policies, and sometimes sharing currencies. The EU is one of the strongest examples of economic integration in the world. The EU was created to promote peace, economic cooperation, and prosperity among European countries through economic integration and shared policies. The EU originally had 28 member countries. After Brexit, the United Kingdom left the EU, reducing the membership to 27 countries. This was a major historic and economic event because the UK was one of Europe's largest economies. The EU was originally formed after World War II. The goal was to prevent future wars in Europe, encourage cooperation, and improve economic growth. The idea was countries that trade and cooperate economically are less likely to go to war. The EU promotes economic integration, political cooperation, and regional stability. The EU represents hundreds of millions of consumers, very high purchasing power, and advanced economies. Many EU countries are highly developed, including Germany, France, Italy, Netherlands. Because consumers generally have high incomes, Europe is an extremely attractive market for international businesses. Most EU countries support capitalism, private business ownership, competition, and open trade. This means businesses can generally operate freely, invest, compete, and trade across borders. The EU encourages fewer trade barriers, easier movement of goods, and economic efficiency. Parliamentary democracies. Most EU countries use parliamentary democracy. This means citizens elect representatives, parliaments make laws, and governments are accountable to voters. The stable democratic systems help create predictable laws, strong legal protections, and business confidence. This political stability attracts investment. 19 EU members adopted the euro. Many EU countries share a common currency, the euro. Countries using the euro are called the Eurozone. Examples would be Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. The benefits of the euro. Using one currency helps simplify trade, eliminate currency exchange costs, increase price transparency, and strengthen economic integration. Example would be a company in France that can sell products in Germany without worrying about exchange rate fluctuations. So why does the EU matter in international business? The EU is important because it creates one of the world's largest unified markets, easier cross-border trade, common regulations, and major consumer demand. International companies often treat the EU as a single major marketplace. Different EU countries influence the EU in different ways, especially Germany economically and France politically, while the United Kingdom historically challenged some EU positions before leaving through Brexit. Germany is considered the economic powerhouse of Europe and EU's most important member economically. Germany has the largest economy in the EU, strong manufacturing industries, major exports, and high productivity. Examples of German strengths are automobiles, engineering, industrial manufacturing, machinery, and chemicals. Major German companies include BMW, Mercedes-Benz Group, Siemens, and Volkswagen. Because Germany's economy is so large, its policies strongly affect the EU. Inflation means rising prices over time. Germany historically fears inflation because severe inflation damaged Germany's economy in the past, especially after World War I. As a result, Germany strongly supports stable prices, controlled government spending, and cautious monetary policy. This influenced the policies of the European Central Bank. Germany prefers low inflation, stable currency values, and financial discipline. France has historically been one of the EU's strongest political leaders. France plays a major role in diplomacy, EU policymaking, defense cooperation, and political integration. France and Germany together are often considered the core leadership partnership of the EU. Protectionism means protecting domestic industries from foreign competition. France has historically been more willing to support local industries, regulate markets, and protect French agriculture and businesses. Examples include support for French farmers, cultural protections, and government involvement in strategic industries. France sometimes favors stronger government involvement than more free market oriented countries. Now, historically, the United Kingdom often disagreed with France inside the EU. The UK generally supported freer markets, less regulation, and lower government involvement, as well as stronger ties with global trade outside of Europe. So the UK often challenged French protectionism, deeper EU integration, and certain EU regulations. In 2016, UK voters chose to leave the EU. Brexit officially removed the UK from the EU. This changed European politics, trade relationships, and the balance of influence within Europe. After Brexit, Germany and France became even more dominant within the EU. So why does this matter for international business? Different countries influence EU business policies differently. For companies operating in Europe, these political differences can affect regulations, trade rules, taxation, labor laws, and market access. Businesses must understand Germany's focus on financial stability, France's tendency towards regulation and protection, and the effects of Brexit on the UK and EU trade. Many newer EU members were formerly communist countries connected to the Soviet Union, but they transformed their economies and political systems to join the EU and achieve economic growth. Before the early 1990s, much of Eastern Europe was controlled or heavily influenced by the Soviet Union. Some countries were directly part of the Soviet Union, while others were communist allies under Soviet influence. Examples include Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These countries generally had communist governments and centrally planned economies. In communist economies, the government controlled factories, prices, production, and resources. The government decided what to produce, how much to produce, and who received goods. Private businesses and free markets were very limited. After the fall of communism, many countries shifted to capitalism, private ownership, competition, and market-based economies. This meant businesses could be privately owned, prices were set by supply and demand, foreign investment was allowed, and international trade expanded. This transition was often difficult but helped economic growth over time. To join the EU, countries had to make major reforms. They improved democratic systems, legal protections, banking systems, property rights, and business regulations. The EU required countries to meet standards involving democracy, rule of law, human rights, and economic stability. These reforms helped create more stable governments, better investment environments, and stronger economies. Several former communist countries have grown rapidly since joining the EU. Some now have rising incomes, growing industries, stronger technology sectors, and improving standards of living. Examples include Poland, Czech Republic, Estonia. These countries benefited from EU membership, foreign investment, trade access, and economic modernization. So why does this matter? These newer EU members became attractive for businesses because they often provide lower labor costs in Western Europe, skilled workers, access to the EU market, and improving infrastructure. Many multinational corporations moved manufacturing operations into Eastern Europe. Examples include automotive factories, technology outsourcing, and electronics manufacturing. Western Europe includes both extremely wealthy small nations and developing Balkan countries that experienced slower growth due to historical conflicts. The high-income countries are wealthy countries with high levels of living, strong economies, advanced infrastructure, and high income per person. Iceland is known for fishing, tourism, renewable energy, and high living standards. Norway is very wealthy because of oil and natural gas exports, strong government management, and a large sovereign wealth fund. Norway consistently ranks among the world's richest countries. Switzerland is famous for banking, finance, pharmaceuticals, luxury watches, and political neutrality. Major Swiss companies include Nestle, Novartis. Even though Switzerland is not in the EU, it is still deeply connected to European trade. The postage stamp countries. These are extremely small European countries. Examples include Monaco, Liechtenstein. They are called postage stamp countries because they are physically tiny on a map. Despite their small size, many are wealthy due to banking, tourism, low taxes, and financial services. Even though these countries are small in size and population, together they still contribute significantly to the global economy. They account for 2% of the world's GDP. This shows how economically productive and wealthy Western Europe is. The middle income countries focuses on the Balkans. The Balkan region is located in southeastern Europe. Countries listed include Albania, Bosnia, Kosovo, and Montenegro, as well as Serbia. These countries generally have lower income levels than Western Europe, developing economies, and ongoing modernization efforts. After the Cold War, many Balkan countries experienced political instability, ethnic conflicts, wars, and economic disruption. Especially after the breakup of the Yugoslav region, this region faced damaged infrastructure, slower economic growth, and political tensions. These conflicts delayed economic development compared to other European countries. So why does this matter? Europe is economically diverse. Some countries are extremely wealthy financial centers, while others are still developing and rebuilding economically. Businesses considering investment must evaluate political stability, economic development, infrastructure, labor markets, and regional risks. When the Soviet Union collapsed, many new independent countries emerged and began transitioning away from communism towards independent political and economic systems. The Soviet Union, USSR, was a communist superpower made up of multiple republics and controlled a huge area across Eastern Europe and Central Asia. It officially dissolved in 1991. This was one of the most important geopolitical events in the 20th century. The Soviet Union broke apart into multiple independent countries. These countries became separate nations with their own governments, economies, currencies, and political systems. The countries that emerged after the Soviet Union collapsed were called newly independent states, or NIS. Examples include Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Georgia. These countries had to create new economies, establish legal systems, develop governments, and transition from communism. After the Soviet collapse, several former Soviet republics formed. The Commonwealth of Independent States. The CIS was created to maintain cooperation, support trade, and coordinate relationships among former Soviet republics. It was not as powerful or centralized as the Soviet Union. Instead, it functioned more like a loose regional partnership. Under the Soviet system, the government controlled industries, prices, production, and employment. After 1991, countries had to transition to market economies, private ownership, and global trade. This caused many challenges, including inflation, unemployment, corruption, economic instability, and political uncertainty. This matters because the collapse of the Soviet Union opened many new markets to global business. International companies became interested in natural resources, energy, manufacturing, telecommunications, and consumer markets. Especially important are Russia's oil and gas, Central Asia's energy resources, and large populations in Eastern Europe. However, investors also face risks such as political instability, corruption, and weak legal systems. Russia transitioned from a communist economy to a market economy, but the process was very difficult and heavily influenced by its dependence on oil exports. Before 1991, Russia operated under a communist, centrally planned economy. This meant the government controlled factories, prices, production, and most businesses. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia tried to transition to capitalism, private ownership, and free markets. This shift created many economic problems, including inflation, unemployment, corruption, falling living standards, and political instability. Many state-owned businesses were privatized very quickly. This allowed some individuals to gain enormous wealth and became oligarchs, or extremely wealthy business elites. The transition was economically painful for many ordinary citizens. Russia is one of the world's largest energy producers. Its economy depends heavily on exports of oil, natural gas, and other natural resources. Energy exports are extremely important because they generate government revenue, support employment, and bring foreign currency into the country. Major customers historically included Europe, China, and other global markets. When oil prices are high, Russia earns more export revenue, government finances improve, and the economy often grows faster. But when oil prices fall, government income drops, economic growth slows, and financial problems increase. Then this makes Russia highly dependent on global energy markets. So during parts of the 2010s, global oil prices dropped sharply. Since Russia relies heavily on oil exports, this caused weaker economic growth, reduced government revenue, slower investment, and economic pressure. The GDP, in this case, had slowed. And so with the slow growth, that means that the economy was growing very slowly or sometimes barely growing at all. Russia is an example of a country heavily dependent on commodity exports, especially oil, gas, and natural resources. So this creates risk because commodity prices can fluctuate greatly. Countries that rely too heavily on one industry may face instability when prices fall. So Russia is important because it has enormous natural resources, a large population, strategic geographic position, and major influence in global energy markets. Businesses involved in energy, mining, manufacturing, and international trade closely monitor Russia's economy. However, companies also consider risks such as political uncertainty, sanctions, currency volatility, and government intervention. The Central Asian republics share strong historical ties to Russia, Islamic cultural influence, limited agricultural resources, and significant fossil fuel reserves. The five republics are Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan. These countries were formerly part of the Soviet Union before becoming independent in 1991. They are located between Russia, China, the Middle East, and South Asia. This gives them important strategic geographic positions. Because these countries were controlled by the Soviet Union for decades, Russia still has major influence through language, politics, trade, infrastructure, and military relationships. Russian is still widely spoken in many areas. Many economic systems and institutions were formerly built during the Soviet period. Most people in Central Asia are Muslim. Islam strongly influences cultural traditions, holidays, and social values. However, these countries are generally non-theocratic states, as most governments remain politically secular because of Soviet historical influence. Most Central Asian languages come from Turkic language families or Persian roots. Examples would be Uzbek, Kyrgyz, and Turkmen, which are Turkic languages. Tajik is more closely related to Persian. This reflects the region's long historical connections with Central Asia, Persia, and Silk Road civilizations. Arable land means land suitable for farming. Much of Central Asia is desert, mountainous, or dry grassland. This limits large scale agriculture. Water shortages and harsh climates can make farming difficult, and as a result, agriculture is less productive in many parts of the region. Per capita income means average income per person. Compared to Western Europe or North America, many Central Asian countries historically had lower average incomes, weaker infrastructure, and developing economies. Economic development has been uneven across the region. One major strength of the region is energy resources. Several countries have large reserves of oil, natural gas, and other fossil fuels. Especially important, Kazakhstan, a major oil producer. Turkmenistan, large natural gas reserves. These resources attract foreign investment, energy companies, and geopolitical interest. Central Asia is strategic important because of energy resources, geographic location, trade routes, and growing connections to China and Russia. The region is important for oil and gas pipelines, transportation corridors, and global energy markets. However, businesses may also face challenges such as political instability, corruption, limited infrastructure, and economic dependence on commodities. Asia is a massive economic region that provides products, labor, investment, capital, and entrepreneurship to the global economy. Asia produces an enormous range of goods at different quality and price levels. This means Asia manufactures inexpensive mass market goods and advanced high quality products. Some countries produce clothing, toys, low cost electronics, household items. These products are often manufactured with lower labor costs. However, the examples of high quality products, Asia is also home to world leading technology and manufacturing industries. So examples would be Toyota, Samsung Electronics, Sony, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan are famous for advanced manufacturing and technology. Asia has a huge workforce with many different skill levels. Asia produces engineers, scientists, software developers, researchers, and technology specialists. Countries known for skilled labor include India, Japan, South Korea, and China. Some Asian countries also produce large numbers of low-cost manufacturing workers. This helped make Asia a global manufacturing center. Examples are textile factories, assembly plants, and electronics manufacturing. Again, remember that MNCs are multinational corporations. Many global companies invest heavily in Asia because of large populations, growing consumer markets, manufacturing capacity, and lower production costs. Examples are factories in China or Vietnam, tech centers in India, semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan. Asia attracts foreign investment because companies want access to both production and consumers. But Asia is not just receiving investment, it also invests heavily in other parts of the world. Countries like China, Japan hold great amounts of foreign assets, government bonds, and international investments. For example, Japan and China have historically purchased large amounts of U.S. Treasury bonds. This makes Asia a major global source of capital. Entrepreneurs are people who start businesses, innovate, and take financial risks. Many Asian business leaders are highly competitive, growth-focused, efficient, and export-oriented. Asian businesses often emphasize efficiency, productivity, long-term growth, and technological advancement. So why does Asia matter to international business? Asia is central to global manufacturing, technology, finance, trade, and supply chains. Many products sold worldwide are designed, manufactured, or assembled in Asia. The region also contains some of the world's fastest growing consumer markets. Japan became an economic superpower through strong government business cooperation and efficient industrial systems, but later faced slow growth, global competition, and demographic problems. Japan is one of the world's largest and most advanced economies. Japan became famous for automobiles, electronics, robotics, precision manufacturing, and technology innovation. Many Japanese companies include Toyota, Sony, Honda, Panasonic. After World War II, Japan experienced extremely rapid economic growth and became a global manufacturing leader. MITI, MITI. MITI stands for Ministry of International Trade and Industry. This was a powerful Japanese government agency that helped guide industrial development. MITI supported key industries, coordinated economic planning, promoted exports, and helped Japanese companies compete globally. Keiretsu. Keiretsu are large networks of related companies connected through business partnerships, shared ownership, banks, and suppliers. These groups often cooperated closely. As an example, Keiretsu might include manufacturers, suppliers, banks, and distributors working together. This system helped Japanese companies reduce risk, improve efficiency, and expand globally. Sogo Sosha are giant Japanese trading companies. They specialize in international trade, global sourcing, logistics, financing, and business coordination. Examples include companies like Mitsubishi Corporation and Mitsu & Co. These firms helped Japan secure raw materials, energy, and global business opportunities. Since Japan has limited natural resources, international trade became extremely important. Even though Japan became highly successful, it later faced serious economic problems. During the 1990s, Japan experienced a long economic slowdown. This period is often called Japan's lost decade. Problems included falling asset prices, banking problems, low consumer spending, and weak economic growth. Japan struggled to return to the rapid growth it experienced earlier. Japan also faced increasing competition from China, South Korea, and other emerging economies. Globalization changed manufacturing and trade patterns. Japan had to adapt to technological changes, global competition, and shifting supply chains. Japan has sometimes been criticized internationally for trade barriers, protectionist policies, or business systems favoring domestic firms. Other countries occasionally argue that Japanese markets are difficult for foreign companies to enter. This created trade tensions, especially with the United States. One of Japan's biggest current problems is demographics. Japan faces an aging population, low birth rates, and a shrinking workforce. This creates economic problems such as labor shortages, rising healthcare costs, slower economic growth, and pressure on pension systems. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world. So why does Japan matter in international business? Japan remains extremely important because of advanced technology, major multinational corporations, global investment, and manufacturing expertise. Japan also strongly influences automotive industries, robotics, electronics, and supply chains worldwide. Australia and New Zealand are developed economies that depend strongly on exports, especially natural resources and agricultural products. Australia has enormous natural resources, including iron ore, coal, natural gas, gold, uranium, and other minerals. These resources are a major source of export income. Major trading partners include China, Japan, South Korea. Australia exports large quantities of raw materials to support manufacturing and energy needs in Asia. Australia has a very large land area but a relatively small population compared to countries like China or India. This means the labor force is smaller, and some industries rely heavily on technology and capital instead of massive labor pools. Because of this, Australia often focuses on high productivity mining and resource-based industries. Merchandise exports means physical goods sold to other countries. Exports represented about 17% of Australia's economy in 2017. This shows international trade is very important to Australia. Australia's economy heavily depends on mining, energy, and raw materials. Examples include coal exports, iron ore exports, liquefied natural gas. Australia is one of the world's major commodity exporters. Because Australia has large amounts of land, it produces agricultural products requiring extensive space. Examples are cattle, sheep, wheat, and wool. These industries rely on large-scale farming and ranching. Meanwhile, New Zealand is known for free market economic reforms, deregulation, and open competition. The government reduced many economic controls and encouraged private business, international trade, and market competition. The exports are also extremely important for New Zealand. Exports made up about 18% of the GDP. New Zealand relies heavily on selling products internationally because its domestic market is relatively small. Pasture lands are large grassy areas used for grazing animals. New Zealand is famous for dairy farming, sheep farming, meat exports, and agricultural products. Its climate and geography support strong agricultural industries, so major exports include milk products, beef, lamb, and wool. So why does Australia and New Zealand matter for international business? Both countries are important because they support food and raw materials to Asia, have stable political systems, and maintain advanced developed economies. They are strongly connected to Asian markets through trade, investment, and commodity exports. South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong experienced extremely rapid industrialization and economic growth, transforming from developing economies into advanced global business centers. These four nations are often called the Four Tigers. Industrialization means shifting from agriculture-based economies to manufacturing, technology, and industrial production. Pacific Asia experienced very fast economic growth because of exports, manufacturing, education, foreign investment, and global trade. This region became a major center for electronics, shipping, finance, and advanced manufacturing. But why were they called the Tigers? It's because their economies grew so aggressively, rapidly, and powerfully. They transformed from relatively poor economies into wealthy industrial economies within a few decades. NICS. These are called NICs. NICs are newly industrialized countries. This means countries transitioning from developing economies to modern industrial economies. Characteristics include rapid manufacturing growth, export expansion, urbanization, and rising incomes. The Four Tigers are classic examples of NICs. NIEs, or NIEs, essentially means the same thing as NICs. It emphasizes rapid economic modernization, export-led growth, and industrial development. These economies became globally competitive in technology, manufacturing, finance, and trade. Emerging markets are countries or economies experiencing rapid growth, industrialization, and increasing integration into global economy. Investors often see emerging markets as high growth opportunities, but also somewhat higher risk than fully developed economies. The Four Tigers were once considered emerging markets, though today many are viewed as highly developed economies. So what made the Four Tigers successful? Several important factors contributed to their success. Export-oriented growth. They focused heavily on selling products internationally. Education. They invested strongly in education and workforce skills. Government support. Governments often promoted industrial development and exports. Foreign investment. They attracted multinational corporations and global trade. Efficient manufacturing. They became highly productive and globally competitive. Examples of their strengths. South Korea is known for automobiles, semiconductors, electronics, Companies are Samsung and Hyundai Motor Company. Taiwan is known for semiconductor manufacturing, electronics. Company would be Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Singapore, known for finance, shipping, logistics, and global trade. Hong Kong, known for finance, international trade, and banking. So why does this matter? The four tigers became major examples of export-led economic development. They demonstrated how trade, industrialization, education, and global integration can rapidly transform economies. Their success influenced many other developing countries. South Korea achieved rapid economic growth through exports, close cooperation between government and large corporations, and the rise of powerful industrial conglomerates. South Korea transitioned dramatically in only a few decades. After the Korean War, South Korea was poor, heavily damaged, and largely agricultural. But through rapid industrialization and exports, became a highly developed economy, a technology leader, and a major global exporter. Today, South Korea is known for electronics, automobiles, shipbuilding, semiconductors, and technology. The exports are extremely important to South Korea's economy. Merchandise exports are physical goods sold internationally. Exports represented 37% of the country's GDP, which is very high. This shows South Korea depends heavily on international trade, global demand, and export manufacturing. South Korea exports include smartphones, semiconductors, cars, ships, televisions, batteries, and electronics. Major export industries include technology, automotive manufacturing, and heavy industry. A major reason for South Korea's success was cooperation between the government, banks, and large corporations. The government helped companies by providing funding, supporting exports, and investing in education and promoting industrial development. In return, companies focused on exports, manufacturing growth, and international competitiveness. This coordinated strategy accelerated economic growth. Chaebol. Chaebol are large family-controlled business conglomerates. These are huge groups of companies operating in many industries. A chaebol may include businesses involved in electronics, construction, finance, shipping, and manufacturing. As an example, Samsung is known for smartphones, semiconductors, electronics, and home appliances. Hyundai Motor Company is known for automobiles, manufacturing, and engineering. Daewoo Group is historically involved in manufacturing, automobiles, shipbuilding, and electronics. LG is known for electronics, appliances, batteries, and chemicals. So why are chaebols important? Chaebols have helped South Korea industrialize rapidly, compete globally, and achieve economies of scale. Because they are so large and diversified, they could invest heavily, expand internationally, and dominate global industries. However, there are challenges to the chaebol system. While chaebols help growth, critics also argue they may create excessive corporate concentration, political influence, limited competition, and economic inequality. South Korea continues balancing economic growth with corporate reform. So why does this matter? South Korea is now one of the world's largest and major technology, manufacturing, and export economies. It plays a critical role in semiconductor supply chains, automotive industries, electronics, and global trade. Taiwan. Taiwan had achieved rapid economic growth by emphasizing export-oriented manufacturing, family-owned businesses, and international trade. Taiwan experienced extremely rapid economic growth during the late 20th century. Like the other four tigers, Taiwan transformed from a relatively poor economy into a highly industrialized and technologically advanced economy. Today, Taiwan is globally important in electronics, semiconductors, manufacturing, and technology supply chains. Unlike some countries dominated by huge conglomerates, Taiwan's economy developed heavily through small and medium-sized family-owned businesses. These businesses were flexible, entrepreneurial, export-focused, and highly competitive. Many Taiwanese companies started as small manufacturers, suppliers, or trading companies, but over time, many expanded globally. This business structure encouraged innovation, adaptability, and rapid growth. Taiwan strongly focused on export-led growth. This means Taiwan produced goods mainly for international markets rather than only domestic consumers. The government supported manufacturing, industrial development, education, and exports. Taiwan became highly successful at producing electronics, computer components, semiconductors, and industrial goods. Taiwan's economy depends heavily on international trade, foreign demand, and global supply chains. The exports represented nearly two-thirds of the economy. This shows that Taiwan is one of the world's most export-dependent economies. The independent industries in Taiwan would be semiconductors, electronics, computer hardware, and precision manufacturing. One of the world's most important companies is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. TSMC manufactures advanced chips used in smartphones, AI systems, computers, and automobiles. Taiwan plays a critical role in global technology supply chain. So why does Taiwan matter in international business? Taiwan is strategically important because it is a major exporter, technology leader, and central to semiconductor manufacturing. Many global companies rely on Taiwanese suppliers. So this makes Taiwan extremely important to electronics industries, global manufacturing, and technology development worldwide. Singapore built a highly successful economy by becoming a global trade hub, financial center, technology center, and major port for international commerce. Re-exporting means importing goods from one country, then exporting them again to another country. Singapore acts as a global trading hub. Because of its strategic location in Southeast Asia, many goods pass through Singapore before being shipped elsewhere. So as an example, oil, electronics, manufacturing, and shipping containers may enter Singapore and then be redistributed globally. The exports accounted for 166% of its 2017 GDP. This number is extremely high. So how can exports exceed GDP? Now that's because Singapore imports many goods, processes or redistributes them, and then re-exports them. Since trade activity is so large relative to the size of Singapore's domestic economy, exports can exceed GDP. This shows Singapore is one of the world's most trade-dependent economies. Singapore has one of the busiest and most advanced ports in the world. Its port system is famous for efficiency, speed, logistics, and global shipping connections. Singapore's location is extremely strategic because it sits near major international shipping routes between Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and other global markets. This makes Singapore a critical center for shipping, logistics, and international trade. Even though Singapore has very limited natural resources, it became a major oil refining and petroleum trading center. Singapore imports crude oil, refines it, and exports petroleum products. This industry became important because of its strategic port location, infrastructure, and global trade networks. Singapore is also a major banking center, investment center, and financial hub. Many multinational corporations use Singapore as their Asian regional headquarters. It is known for strong infrastructure, stable government, efficient regulations, advanced telecommunications, and global connectivity. So major industries include banking, wealth management, insurance, and financial technology. Singapore develops strong high-tech industries including electronics, biotechnology, semiconductors, and advanced manufacturing. The government is invested heavily in education, technology, research, and innovation. So Singapore focuses strongly on skilled labor, productivity, and advanced industries. So again, why does Singapore matter for international business? It is one of the world's most important trade hubs, shipping centers, financial centers, and logistic hubs. And despite its small size, it plays a massive role in global commerce, multinational business, and international finance. Hong Kong developed into a global trade and finance hub because of its strategic location, strong port facilities, skilled workforce, and close connection to mainland China. Hong Kong operates under the principle one country, two systems. Although Hong Kong is part of China, it historically maintained a high degree of independence in legal systems, business regulations, financial systems, and trade policies. This autonomy helped Hong Kong maintain a business-friendly environment, international financial credibility, and open markets. Hong Kong became highly attractive to multinational companies for several reasons. It has one of the world's best natural harbors. This helped it become a major shipping center, logistics hub, and global trade gateway. Its port facility supported imports, exports, and international shipping. Like Singapore, geography played a major role in Hong Kong's success. Hong Kong became an important gateway between China and the global economy. Many international firms used Hong Kong as their regional headquarters, financial center, or business entry port into China. Before China fully opened its economy, Hong Kong played a crucial intermediary role. Even today, many firms still use Hong Kong to invest in China, raise capital, and manage Asian operations. Hong Kong developed a skilled workforce, strong educational system, and highly productive business culture. Its labor force became known for finance, trade, management, and professional services. This supported the growth of banking, investment, and international commerce. It is also one of the world's leading financial centers, banking hubs, and stock market locations. Many global banks and investment firms operate there. Hong Kong became important for international finance, foreign exchange, stock trading, and investment into China. Like Singapore, Hong Kong is also a re-export economy. This means many goods enter Hong Kong, are redistributed or processed, and then exported elsewhere. Much trade moving between China and the rest of the world historically passed through Hong Kong. Exports accounted for 161% of its 2017 GDP. This very high number shows trade is much larger than Hong Kong's domestic economy. Exports exceed GDP because Hong Kong handles massive volumes of international trade, shipping, and re-exports. This demonstrates how globally connected Hong Kong's economy is. So why is this really, really important? Hong Kong became important because it combines global finance, trade, shipping, legal infrastructure, and access to China. It serves as the bridge between East and West, China and global markets. China combines communist political control with market-oriented economic reforms, creating a rapidly growing and globally influential economy. China uses a mixed economic and political system. This means politically, China remains controlled by the Communist Party, but economically, it uses many market-based capitalist practices. So China combines state control with private business, trade, and market competition. China is governed by the Communist Party of China, CPC. The government maintains strong control over politics, major state-owned industries, media, and many strategic sectors. Unlike Western democracies, China has one-party political leadership. The state still plays a major role in economic planning, banking, and industrial policy. Even though China is politically communist, it introduced many market-oriented reforms. Beginning in the late 1970s under Deng Xiaoping, China encouraged private businesses, allowed foreign investment, expanded international trade, and opened markets. These reforms helped transform China into a manufacturing and export powerhouse. China's economy grew extremely rapidly for decades. It grew 10.9% a year from 2000 to 2009. This is extraordinarily fast economic growth. During this period, China experienced massive industrialization, export growth, rising incomes, and urban expansion. Few large economies in history have grown this quickly for so long. This rapid growth helped lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. FDI is foreign direct investment. This means foreign companies invest heavily in China by building factories, opening operations, and investing capital. Why do companies invest in China? This is due to the huge labor force, low manufacturing costs, growing consumer markets, and export opportunities. Many multinational corporations moved production to China. Examples include electronics manufacturing, textiles, consumer goods, industrial production. Urbanization means people moving from rural areas into cities, and China experienced one of the largest urban migrations in history. Millions moved into rapidly growing cities for factory jobs, manufacturing, and service industries. This helped fuel industrial growth, infrastructure expansion, and rising consumer markets. At first, foreign companies mainly invested in China. Then later, Chinese companies also began investing heavily overseas. This is called outbound foreign direct investment. Chinese firms started buying foreign companies, investing in infrastructure, acquiring natural resources, and expanding globally. China became both a major destination for investment and a major global investor. So, China is one of the most important countries in manufacturing, exports, global supply chains, technology, and international trade. Many multinational companies depend on China for production, sourcing, and consumer markets. China also increasingly influences global finance, infrastructure development, and geopolitics. So this slide shows just how China transformed from mainly receiving foreign investment into becoming both a major destination for global investment and a major investor in other countries. So during the 1980s, both inflows and outflows were very low. This is because China's economy was still relatively closed and less developed. After economic reforms began under Deng Xiaoping, China slowly opened its economy to international business. The blue line rises sharply after the early 1990s. So this means foreign companies started investing heavily in China. Why? This is due to cheap labor, huge population, manufacturing opportunities, export potential, and a growing consumer market. The multinational corporations built factories, supply chains, and operations in China. This helped China become the world's factory. The rising inflows also reflect rapid industrial growth, expanding cities, infrastructure construction, and export manufacturing. Millions of workers moved from rural areas into cities. This fueled factory production, exports, and economic growth. The orange line stayed low for many years and then rose rapidly after about 2005. This means that Chinese companies started investing heavily abroad. China shifted from only receiving investment to also becoming a global investor. Chinese firms began buying foreign companies, investing in infrastructure, acquiring energy and natural resources, and expanding globally. Here are some examples of Chinese global investment. The Chinese had expanded into Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Investments included ports, railways, technology firms, mining, and energy products. The orange line spikes dramatically around 2016. This shows a surge in outbound Chinese investment. Chinese firms were aggressively expanding internationally. Later, the line dropped somewhat because China introduced tighter capital controls and global political concerns increased. So the key economic message of this graph is that China's transformation was huge in terms of becoming a global economic superpower. China had evolved from a country dependent on foreign investment to one of the world's largest international investors. This reflects China's increasing wealth, industrial power, and global influence. The important concept here is that the inward versus outward FDI. Inward FDI. These are foreign companies investing into China. So examples will be factories, manufacturing plants, and technology investments. Outward FDI. This would be Chinese companies investing in other countries. So this would be acquisitions, infrastructure projects, and overseas factories. So why does this matter in international business? Well, China's FDI growth changed global supply chains, manufacturing, investment flows, and international competition, China became central to global trade, infrastructure financing, and multinational business strategy. India opened its economy through major reforms in 1991, encouraging trade and foreign investment, but continues to face challenges such as corruption, infrastructure problems, and bureaucracy. Historically, India had widespread poverty, low industrialization, low average income levels. Even though India has a huge population and economy, many people historically live with limited access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. However, India has also experienced major economic growth in recent decades. India was formerly ruled by British Raj. The British rule influenced India's legal system, government institutions, education, railways, and business practices. One important result is that the English became widely used. This helped India develop strong industries in information technology, outsourcing, and global business services. A major turning point occurred in 1991 when India introduced significant economic reforms to open its economy. Before 1991, India had a more state controlled economy with heavy government regulation and protectionism. The reforms encouraged globalization, competition, trade, and private business growth. India then lowered tariffs, import restrictions, and trade barriers. So this made it easier for foreign goods, international companies, and global trade to enter India. India became more integrated into the global economy. Again, under the foreign direct investment, India encouraged foreign companies to invest, build operations, and enter Indian markets. This brought capital, technology, management expertise, and jobs. Foreign firms increased investment in technology, manufacturing, telecommunications, and services. India also reformed banking, finance markets, and investment systems. The goal was to create a more efficient financial system, stronger economic growth, and better access to capital. These reforms helped expand business investment, entrepreneurship, and international trade. However, even with rapid growth, India still faces major economic and structural problems. Widespread corruption can create problems such as bribery, inefficiency, unfair business practices, and delays. This can make business operations more difficult and increase costs. The infrastructure includes roads, railways, ports, power systems, internet, and transportation networks. India's huge population places heavy pressure on infrastructure. The problems may include traffic congestion, unreliable electricity, overcrowded transportation, and logistics challenges. Red tape means excessive bureaucracy and regulations. Businesses may face complicated procedures, licensing delays, paperwork, and government approvals. This can slow operations and investment. So, India is important because it has one of the world's largest populations, a massive labor force, growing middle class consumers, and strong technology industries. India is especially important in software, IT services, outsourcing, engineering, and pharmaceuticals. Major global companies operate heavily in India. The Southeast Asian countries are becoming increasingly important because of rapid economic growth, low labor costs, and their attractiveness to multinational corporations. Many Southeast Asian economies have experienced rapid industrialization, export growth, increasing foreign investment, and rising incomes. These countries have become important parts of global manufacturing, supply chains, international trade. The region has benefited from globalization, export oriented growth, and expanding international business activity. These countries include Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. These have become attractive manufacturing and investment locations. The one major advantage is relatively inexpensive labor. Lower wages can reduce manufacturing and production costs for companies. Because of this, multinational corporations often move production facilities to these countries. The industries include electronics, textiles, automotive manufacturing, and consumer goods. So these countries receive large amounts of foreign direct investment from foreign companies. Multinational corporations invest by building factories, opening offices, and expanding production operations. Why would companies invest there? Besides lower costs and growing consumer markets, there's also the strategic location and improving infrastructure. This foreign investment helps to create jobs, transfer technology, and stimulate economic growth. Vietnam, for example, has become one of the fastest growing manufacturing centers in Asia. In recent years, many global companies shifted production to Vietnam. Vietnam has also become increasingly important to multinational corporations, or VNCs, because companies want lower production costs, supply chain diversification, and alternatives to manufacturing concentrated in China. Many of these firms now manufacture products in Vietnam, and these industries include electronics, clothing, footwear, and technology assembly. Vietnam's workforce is also attractive because it is relatively young, lower cost, and increasingly educated. A young workforce provides long term labor supply, adaptability, and economic growth potential. This makes Vietnam attractive for manufacturing, technology production, and export industries. So, Southeast Asia has become a major region for manufacturing, exports, and foreign investment. Many multinational corporations use Southeast Asia as part of their global supply chains. The region is strategically important because of growing populations, expanding middle classes, and competitive labor costs. Africa has enormous economic potential because of its natural resources and agriculture, but its economies were heavily shaped by colonial history. South Africa is viewed as one of the continent's most economically advanced countries. Much of Africa was controlled by European powers from the late 1800s through the mid 1900s. Major colonial powers included the United Kingdom, France, Belgium, Portugal, Germany. Colonialism affected political systems, languages, borders, infrastructure, and economic structures. Many colonial economies were designed mainly to export raw materials to Europe instead of building diversified local industries. That legacy still affects many African economies today. Examples are many countries rely heavily on exports of raw materials. Some borders group together different ethnic groups, and infrastructure was often built mainly to move resources to ports. So, a commodity is a basic raw material sold globally. Examples include oil, gold, copper, diamonds, coca, coffee, and natural gas. Many African economies depend heavily on commodity exports. Examples would be Nigeria, would be oil, Zambia, copper, Botswana, diamonds, Ghana, coca, and gold. Why are commodity dependence a risky maneuver? Commodity prices change a lot. If oil or metal prices fall, government revenues fall, exports decline, and economic growth slows. This makes some African economies vulnerable to global market fluctuations. Agriculture remains extremely important across Africa. Many people work in farming, livestock, and food production. Major agricultural exports include coffee, coca, tea, cotton, and fruits. Agriculture is important because it creates jobs, supports exports, and feeds large populations. However, the challenges here include droughts, climate change, limited infrastructure, and low productivity in some regions. South Africa is considered one of Africa's most developed and industrialized economies. It has advanced banking systems, manufacturing industries, mining industries, stock markets, and stronger infrastructure than many neighboring countries. South Africa has historically been a major center for finance, transportation, mining, and regional business activity. South Africa also acts as a regional business hub, a gateway for investment to Africa, and a leader in trade and industrial production. Major industries include mining for gold, platinum, and diamonds, banking, manufacturing, and telecommunications. The Middle East is historically important, rich in oil resources, but also known for political instability. Many countries are now trying to diversify their economies beyond oil. The cradle of civilization means the Middle East is one of the earliest centers of human civilization. Ancient civilization developed there thousands of years ago, including Mesopotamia, which is now modern Iraq, ancient Persia, and early trading societies. The region contributed to writing systems, mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and early governments. Many religions also originated there: Judaism, Christianity, Islam. The Middle East has experienced wars, territorial disputes, religious conflicts, revolutions, and political instability. Examples include Arab-Israeli conflicts, Gulf Wars, civil wars in countries like Syria, terrorism and extremist groups, tensions involving oil and geopolitical influence. Political instability can discourage foreign investment, disrupt oil production, increase business risk, and hurt tourism and trade. Multinational companies operating there must carefully evaluate political risk, security, and government stability. The Middle East contains some of the world's largest oil and natural gas reserves. Major oil producing countries include Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Iran, Iraq. Oil has made some of these countries extremely wealthy. So why is oil so important? The oil exports generate government revenue, infrastructure investment, sovereign wealth funds, and global political influence. For decades, many Middle Eastern economies depended heavily on petroleum exports. Many Middle Eastern countries realize oil will not last forever. Problems include oil price volatility, renewable energy growth, electric vehicles, and global climate policies. So countries are trying to diversify their economies, meaning they are reducing dependence on oil and developing other industries. Some examples of this diversification are tourism, finance, technology, logistics, manufacturing, entertainment, renewable energy, and real estate. For example, Saudi Arabia created the Vision 2030, which aims to expand tourism, technology, and private business sectors. United Arab Emirates, especially Dubai, diversified into global finance, airlines, tourism, and trade. So this map mainly focuses on the strategic importance of oil, the Syrian civil war, and the rivalry between the major regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Iran. Civil war broke out in Syria in 2011. This conflict became one of the most devastating wars in recent history. In 2011, protests against the Syrian government began during the Arab Spring. Violence escalated into civil war. Different groups became involved: the Syrian government, rebel groups, and extremist organizations, as well as foreign countries. Hundreds of thousands died. Millions fled the country. This created refugee crisis, regional instability, economic destruction, and security concerns. Neighboring countries such as Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon received large numbers of refugees. Oil is not just an economic resource, it is also a geopolitical tool. Countries with large oil reserves gain wealth, political influence, military power, and global importance. Saudi Arabia owns about 1/4 of the world's oil reserves. Saudi Arabia has historically used oil wealth to strengthen its economy, expand regional influence, and support allies. So why does Saudi Arabia matter globally? It is one of the world's largest oil exporters, a leading member of OPEC, and highly influential in global energy prices. When oil prices change, the global economy often reacts. Iran has historically been a major military and political power. Iran uses oil reserves to support military capabilities, influence neighboring countries, and promote its political agenda. A key element to point out in Middle East politics is regional competition between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The rivalry includes political influence, religious differences, proxy conflicts, and competition for regional leadership. This affects conflicts in places like Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon. So the map also shows important geographic areas: the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Mediterranean Sea. These are critical for shipping, oil transportation, and global trade. A large portion of the world's oil exports passes through the Strait of Hormuz, near the Persian Gulf. Conflict there can affect global oil prices, supply chains, and international markets. Businesses operating in the Middle East must consider wars, sanctions, political tensions, and terrorism risks. Many countries in the region depend heavily on oil exports. This creates great wealth, but also vulnerability when oil prices fall. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey all compete for influence. This shapes trade, diplomacy, and investment. South America has shared historical and economic challenges such as inequality, poverty, and political instability. Many countries once used protectionist economic policies, but later shifted toward freer markets and experienced economic growth. Many South American countries share similar historical experiences because of European colonization, dependence on raw material exports, military governments, and economic struggles. Most countries were colonized mainly by Spain and Portugal. This created similarities in language, religion, and legal systems, as well as economic development patterns. There are huge income disparities. This means that there's a very large gap between rich and poor people. South America has historically had wealthy elites, but also many low-income populations. Examples include luxury urban areas that may exist near poor neighborhoods or slums. This unequal distribution of wealth can create social tensions, crime, and political unrest. Although some South African countries are middle-income economies, many people still experience low wages, limited access to education, poor health care, and unemployment. Poverty is especially common in rural areas and marginalized communities. Many South American countries experienced military coups, dictatorships, corruption, inflation crises, and political protests during the 20th century. The examples include economic crisis in Argentina, political turmoil in Venezuela, military rule in several countries during the Cold War. Political instability can discourage foreign investment, business expansion, and economic growth. So what is import substitution industrialization, or ISI? ISI is an economic policy where countries try to produce goods domestically instead of importing them. Governments protected local industries by placing high tariffs on imports, limiting foreign competition, and subsidizing domestic companies. The goal of ISI was we should build our own industries instead of relying on foreign goods. Countries that hope to industrialize, create jobs, and reduce dependence on foreign countries. Over time, many ISI policies cause problems, such as local companies becoming inefficient, consumers pay higher prices, industries lacked competition, and governments accumulated debt. This, of course, would lead economies to become less competitive globally. By the late 1980s, many South American countries shifted towards freer market policies and reverse import substitution. So this included lowering tariffs, privatizing state-owned companies, encouraging foreign investment, and increasing international trade. This shift is often called economic liberalization. After market reforms, many economies grew rapidly, inflation improved, foreign investment increased, and exports expanded. Countries like Brazil, Chile, and Argentina experienced strong economic growth during parts of the 1990s. South America has important natural resources and growing economies, but geography and transportation challenges have historically limited trade and development. Geography strongly affects South America. The physical geography affects economic development. Two major geographic features are highlighted. Here, the Andes Mountains runs along the western side of South America. They are one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, very high and difficult to cross. Why does this matter economically? The mountains make it harder to build roads, transport goods, connect countries, and develop trade. This historically isolated some inland regions. The Amazon River and rainforest region cover a huge part of the northern South America regions, especially Brazil. The Amazon basin contains dense rainforest, has limited transportation infrastructure, and it is difficult for industrial development. This also makes transportation and communication harder. The note on the upper right explains that many South American countries changed their economic systems during the late 1980s. They moved towards free market economic policies. This included reducing trade barriers, encouraging private businesses, and attracting foreign investment. Earlier protectionist policies or import substitution had caused inefficiency, inflation, debt, and weak economic growth. So governments began adopting market-oriented reforms, privatization, and globalization strategies. Basically, South America became more attractive to US companies, European firms, and Asian investors. Why? Because countries were opening markets, reducing regulations, and encouraging business growth. It's also key to know that the rising prices for oil, copper, iron ore, and tin allowed South America to be rich in natural resources and commodities. For example, Chile has copper, Brazil has iron ore and agriculture, Venezuela, oil, Peru, mining. During periods of high commodity prices, exports rise, economies grow faster, and governments collect more revenue. The map also shows how large Brazil is relatively compared to other South American countries. Brazil is the largest economy in South America, the most populous country in the region, and a major exporter. Major industries include agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and energy. So here are the review questions that summarize the major concepts from this chapter about global marketplaces and international business regions. Describe the U.S. role in the world economy. So this asks about why the United States is so important globally. Well, first, it is one of the largest, if not the largest economy in the world. It is a major source of technology, innovation, investment, and consumer demand. It is home to many multinational corporations. It has a strong influence on trade, finance, global markets, and international politics. The US dollar is the world's dominant reserve currency. How do differences in income levels and income distribution among countries affect international businesses? So this is about purchasing power and market differences. The key idea here is that different countries have different income levels, consumer wealth, and spending ability. This affects what products companies sell, pricing strategies, marketing, and business opportunities. As an example, luxury products sell better in high-income countries. Low-cost goods may succeed in lower-income markets. Income distribution also matters. Some countries have wealthy elites, but widespread poverty. What role did MIDI serve in the Japanese economy? MIDI stands for Ministry of International Trade and Industry. In Japan, MIDI helped guide Japan's post-war economic growth by supporting strategic industries, coordinating industrial policy, promoting exports, protecting developing industries, and encouraging technological development. It worked closely with Japanese businesses. What's Keiretsu? Keiretsu is a network of related Japanese companies that work closely together. It features cross-ownership of shares, long-term business relationships, cooperation between banks and manufacturers. Examples would be Mitsubishi Group, Sumitomo Group, and the purpose here is for stability, cooperation, and long-term growth. What are the four tigers? Why are they important to international businesses? The four tigers are South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong. They are important because they industrialized rapidly, became export-driven economies, attracted major foreign investment, and became important global business and manufacturing centers. They are examples of newly industrialized economies, or NIEs. What is a chaebol? A chaebol is a large South Korean family-controlled business conglomerate. Examples are Samsung, Hyundai, LG. Characteristics are diversified businesses, close government ties, strong export focus. Chaebols helped drive South Korea's rapid economic growth. So discuss the role of natural resources and agriculture in Africa's economy. So this focuses on commodities and agriculture in Africa. Key point is that African economies depend heavily on oil, mining, metals, and agriculture. The agriculture provides employment, exports, and food supply. Natural resources create export revenue. The challenges would be dependence on commodity prices, poverty, infrastructure issues, and economic instability. How did import substitution policies affect the economies of Brazil and Argentina? Import substitution means producing goods domestically instead of importing them. Countries like Brazil and Argentina used high tariffs and government protection to build local industries. The positive effects are industrial growth, reduced dependence on imports, job creation. However, the negative long-term effects are inefficient industries, lack of competition, inflation, debt, slower economic growth. Later, these countries moved forward freer trade, privatization, and market reforms. Thank you, everyone. I hope all of you found this lecture useful. Please be sure to reach out or comment if you have any questions. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.